nothing more powerful than the human soul on fire. Nothing else will propel you like your heart's deepest desire. I put it there for a reason. I consider it an act of treason to push it to the side, to live and not have tried, 'cause I know you're unlimited. You've got both the power and means to live life uninhibited. You came to realize your dreams. Have you listened to how you talk to yourself in the mirror? Better to close your eyes and go inside to see it clearer. I promise you a pure perfection. How about focusing on that reflection? The way is very clear. Release yourself from fear, 'cause I know you're unlimited. You have got the power and means to live life uninhibited. You came to realize your dreams. This is your life. Go on, go out and live it. Change it up, get sexy with it. There is love and excitement upon the breeze. There are magical moments for you to seize. Just remember I love you and nothing's impossible. Change your beliefs and I swear you're unstoppable. You have got the power and means to live life uninhibited. You came to realize your dreams. Believe me, you're unlimited. Your passions are unlimited.
So, creating a life you love to live. Creating a life you love to live. I want to talk about that today, but first of all, I need to say that even though the talk title is The Path to Bliss, bliss is not the same as happiness. Bliss isn't the same as happiness. And that's important to know. But let me give you just a few facts about happiness, and let's just get that over with. And I got this all from the Time Magazine special report, special edition, The Science of Happiness. And if you read it, it's all what we've been teaching for a very long time. Glad they caught up, but they made it really shiny and glossy, and people are going to read it. It's good. Get the message out. So here's just some fun facts about happiness. First of all, the happiest occupations are clergy and firefighters. What surprised me was the clergy part. And they had a lot of fun facts, but let's just go with the worship stuff. People, the relationship between worship and happiness. 41% of people who attended worship, some sort of worship service, and this was across the board. This wasn't Christian. This could have been Jewish. It could be Muslim, anything. They just go to worship once a week. 41% of them said that they were happy. 32% of the people who attend once a month said they're happy. And 21.8% who seldom attend a worship service said that they're happy. So guess what? We do have some sort of strange Kool-Aid that people are drinking because they're happier if they come more often. That's what they said. Now, how happy are we in the United States? 55% of us are pretty happy, 30% are very happy, and 15% are not happy at all because they haven't gone to a worship service in the last week. I just love this stuff. But that's not what I want to talk about. As I've said, that's not what I want to talk about, because happiness is not bliss. to give you an idea of what I think about happiness, I'll tell you something that really affected me. It must have been about 25, 26 years ago, maybe longer. I know I was in Salt Lake City. I was in my first church, and I read the results of a poll. And the poll asked people, these random, who creates these things? But anyway, they asked people, if you could ask God 2 questions, what 2 questions would you ask? And unanimously, across the board, people wanted to know 2 things. First of all, would there ever be world peace? The second one was, will I ever be happy? Which sets us up for the reason that bliss is not happiness, because bliss isn't conditional and happiness is. Will I ever be happy is people are viewing it as something that happens outside of me. Something's got to happen so I can be happy. They're even asking this God outside, will I ever be happy? So as though happiness were something out there. And the thing that I know about happiness and what most people show when they're speaking is that people are happy with, well, not so happy with, but with this, because of this, because, with, influenced by. So something happens, it triggers a euphoric feeling, and we're happy for a while. But it's conditional on what has happened or happening, whether we are acquiring or letting something go that creates or sparks happiness. So happiness is something that sort of happens to us, which is, let's just take a deep breath. How many of you have ever experienced that? And we all know what would make us happy sometimes, right? Unfortunately, if you know what would make you happy, then you strive for that, then you get happy, and then the happy wears off. I was telling first service because it occurred to me what would make me really happy is the first bite of a Toll House chocolate chip cookie with lots of walnuts right out of the oven. That first bite. But then after about the 5th cookie, because if the first bite was good, the next bite will be good, and then the next bite will be good, then the cookie's gone, so another cookie. But unfortunately, the happy wears off, and then the stomach starts to hurt. And I don't even remember that I had really been happy. All I remember is my stomach hurting. That's the flow of happiness. That it's we acquire it, we enjoy it, but then it loses its spark. It's something. It goes away, and then we need more. So what is bliss? I Googled definition of bliss, and here's some of the definitions. Perfect happiness, utter joy, contentment, the joy of heaven. Those were defined as what bliss is. But I especially like that joy of heaven because it's hard to explain bliss unless you capitalize the joy and realize that it is an aspect of the divine. Happiness is not capitalized. Happiness is something you fleetingly feel, but it's not a state of being. Joy, capital J, joy, is a state of being, the joy of heaven. But here's the definition I loved, and I did Google it. I don't know where it came from, but if you want a good definition will show up. And this was the good definition I loved. It's the metaphysical sweet spot between spiritual ideals and reality. So the spiritual, what we know about spirit, and it's taking form somewhere in there is bliss. And because it is between these two things, it is not conditioned by these two things. Bliss is conditionless. I may have made up that word, but it's not conditioned. It's not conditioned by conditions. Sounds like a song. If we were Glee, really, I mean, truly, that's what I want. Just once. I would love for us to have Glee moments, and Joel is always on the ready. And I will come up with just a few phrases of a song, and then he'd go into it, and then dancers would come from all sides and dance to this music, and then all of a sudden from behind the stage would come out the choir. Oh, okay, I can. There's a good for me, and I ought to have it. And my good is my God. But move on. Bliss is conditionalist, just like joy is conditionalist, because God is not conditioned. And it's that state where we move heaven to earth, spiritual reality into physical form, and we are the instrument through which that happens, because in the Sanskrit word for man, I mean, it wasn't man, but it's a Sanskrit word for man is the dispenser of the divine. We are to take that which is ideal, which is holy, which is wholesome, which is whole, complete, and perfect, and then we bring it into reality. That's how we do it. And then that place, there is bliss. Now, why would we want that? Because in that place, there's also all power. Ernest Holmes says there's a power in the universe for good, and we can use it, and I believe that good also feels good. Ernest Holmes says it's not what we pray to or what we pray about, it's what we pray from. And in this place, there's this experience of some sort of serenity that allows us to know that there's a good in the universe and we can use it. And when we're in that place, our word has power because we recognize the power in us. It's not like we gather power or all of a sudden we turn on a switch. It's that we recognize the power, and what is recognized will become realized. And this is very important because, frankly, right now, I'm afraid. I have been so smug because I lived in the Northwest. I don't live in Hurricane Florida. I don't live in Tornado Alley. I don't live on the east side of the mountains where they have forest fires for months. But now I live in Seattle, which is probably just a hop, skip, and a jump from Korea. Now, I mean, how many of you have had that thought? As soon as the talk began, I thought, now where would be the best possible target? And it went off in my head. There's a power in the universe for good, and we can use it, but first we have to become that good power. The reason we can use it is we have to realize that we are it, and we don't realize where we are it when we're in fits of fear. Because fear can only create more fear. We can't use that power while we're blaming. We can't use that power. Now, you can use a lot of force and you can say a lot of things, but the power of the universe must be in integrity with the universe, and the universe, the highest word for that universe is love. So that power has to be in integrity with love, and love is inclusive. And love is binding. So if I want to use this power, I have to find that place where I can feel that power, and it would be loving, and it would be peaceful. Darn it. See, we can get angry and huffy and puffy. How many of you have ever got angry, huffy, and puffy? We get angry, huffy, and puffy, and stuff can happen, but it's not the power for good. in the universe. The power for good in the universe is much more centered and finds its center in us. So I want to touch that more than ever because I know that consciousness is not only creative, it's also contagious. And fear breeds fear, but love breeds love. And sometimes it's hard to love when we are in fear. How many of you have noticed that? But there's a place in me, there's a place in each and every one of us that recognizes itself as love. It recognizes itself as power. And to reach that, whoa. See, what's happened, I think, in the way that I have used this, or the way that it has been used in the science of mind, because that's what we're teaching. Right now I'm teaching the science of mind and spirit. And the way it's been used in the science of mind and spirit, when we say there's a power for good in the universe and we can use it, is oftentimes it has been used for us. And maybe the person that asked us to pray for him. We haven't really, I don't think, as a group of people expanded our power and said, let's create some love waves. Let's create some peace waves. Let's create a sense of security, because that allows us to enjoy this day, the day that I'm breathing. That security allows me to be creative, not only in my life and the people around me, but it might actually create a new future for all of us. And if you don't believe that, in fact, actually, I know that at some level you do believe that, because people don't go to church in Seattle anymore, and you're here. There's a part of you that believes that and wants to remember it deeply and awaken it. So how do we do that? We go into bliss. Bliss is not conditioned. It's conditionless. Now, I've actually had the experience of being blissfully aware of peace and contentment and security while everything around me was falling apart. I've known bliss through rejection and abandonment and physical upset. So I know this is real. It doesn't mean that this stuff's not happening and I'm not aware of it. No, I'm very aware, but it doesn't touch me. Because the me that I am is not touchable. And from that place, it's very easy to say, let there be, and conditions fall in line. But first we have to find that place. And we might call it bliss. So how do we get to bliss? How do we get to the unconditioned state of being that Jesus may have described as peace that passes understanding? There's 3 things we do to go there. The first one is a consistent spiritual practice. Consistent. Not when you have time, not when you think about it, not when things are bad, not when you finally have your prayer partner call and say, do you need a prayer today? No, consistent. Consistent means ongoing. And it has to be engaging. It's sort of like in Buddhism, they have the prayer wheel and they just go like this and the prayers go off into the universe. But you're the prayer wheel. You do it. And what's so great about our religion is that we can do it anytime. This is our connection. Our consciousness is our connection to our God, and we can be in conscious connection with God no matter what we're doing. So yes, you can sit and you can listen to great music and you can sit in a lotus position and you can breathe deeply, and that's all wonderful. But you know what? You can leave the house and nobody knows that you're having an ongoing conversation with the Most High. Nobody knows. The conversation, wow, what a great day. Whoa, man, that tree, you did really good on that tree. And I'm glad I can see it. Oh, there's so-and-so. I know there's something I need to remember. What do I need to remember? Oh, yeah. How are your children? The ongoing conversation, constantly. If I'm going to sit down and do something, what might be called a prayer, but a prayer is just catching God's thoughts. It's an ongoing conversation. Like, I've only got 15 minutes, and I'd really like to just have this happen. And 15 minutes expands, and everything happens in the 15 minutes. I love it. Janet Garvey-Stanvik, one of our wonderful ministers that was here and then went to Napa, and now she's in Canada. You stand up, Janet. Oh, just a second. Yay, Janet's here. I learned so much about this from Janet. No, let me continue. I learned so much about this from Janet because I can condense it. Janet would be on her way someplace, like she needed to pick up a gift or something like that, and she'd say, now God, you know I've only got 5 minutes, so let it show up quick. There it'd be, and off she'd go. Ongoing conversation. The other thing I learned from her is that a stop sign meant to stop and praise God. It's an ongoing conversation. It's a consistent spiritual practice. One of the people in my mystical living class said that she decided to do her practice while she was watering plants for some friends. So she's watering the plants, and as she's watering the plants, she's saying, there's only God, there's only God, there's only God, there's only God, there's only God. A benefit of all that was when the owners for the plants came back, they said, our plants have never grown so much. But here's the thing. Last day, she's finishing up. There's only God, there's only God, there's only God. She's driving home, and everything is the same, and then nothing is the same. Everything's the same, but nothing is the same. And she's driving, and she says, my goodness, it's all God. It's no longer a platitude. It's a revelation of what has always been. Consistent spiritual practice. The second thing that will allow you to move into a state of bliss, and that is get over yourself. Just get over yourself. Me thoughts, little m, little e thoughts will never get you into bliss. What do they think of me? What I should be? It's like, oh, who cares? Really? Expand your awareness. Care about this, care about this, care about this, care about this. Allow yourself to get out of me, and you'll find the capital S self. Now, part of it is just by doing your prayer work and consideration, but also another way to get over me and get into self is anything that makes you pay attention so that me disappears. Meditation will do it. Art will do it. Anything that you have to concentrate on will do it. There was a time, I know you're not going to believe this, but it's the truth, honest. I lifted weights. Don't look at each other like that. I saw that look. I got so high on lifting weights because when you have something very heavy over your head, you pay attention. When you could hurt yourself, you pay attention. One of the reasons I like to ride a horse is if you don't want to get hurt, you pay attention. And me disappears, and what's left is that thing between spiritual ideas and reality, and it's bliss. The last thing that I would recommend if you want to take this path to bliss, and you could take either one of these paths or take all of them, just speed it up, take the highway to heaven, and that is to use your words in a positive, affirmative way. I think it was, I forgot who, Tony Robbins said this, but I'm sure Ernest Holmes wrote it down a long time before that. Tony Robbins has said you can't think two thoughts at the same time, so choose your thoughts. So when you are feeling like you are allowing yourself to move into a bad mood and you want to move through it more quickly, say something like, God's joy fills me now. God's joy, capital J, joy. God's joy fills me now. God's joy is my reality. God's joy is my truth. God's joy is the way that I will live and move and have my being. And you start to say those things, and guess what? They start to become real. What you tell yourself over and over again becomes more and more real. And now it's all a story. But you can tell yourself, I'm the victim of this, or I'm waiting for this to happen. Or you could say, you know what? I am in bliss now. I'm in bliss now. And what happens is you start to move into that sweet spot where what is true of God starts to become true of you, and then it must reach consciousness and must show up as a reality. What are you choosing? Now here's the deal. I wrote this whole talk, and then I saw in my mind that that movie, A Few Good Men. How many of you remember A Few Good Men? Remember that? And Jack Nicholson saying, you can't handle the truth. I'm not sure your ego can handle bliss. Because what would it have to do? What if it was just available? How many of you have a little bit of squeamishness in your stomach? Like, what would I do? What if I could just be peaceful while my child did whatever my child does? What if I could be totally okay while I contemplated the condition of the world right now? See, the ego wants to feel like it has some sort of power, and the ego has no power. But it wants to feel that way. So bliss without work is not appealing for some people. But you're here. And what if it's time to go into that place, live from that place, and operate from that place? But you see, from that place, you can say, let it be, and it's got power. From that place, that inner place of pure contentment, you're not trying to make stuff happen so things get better. You realize the infinite good, and you speak that good into existence. Totally different thing. Because the power in the universe for good actually feels good. It feels full. So let's try it. If you'd like to, just join me by taking a deep breath. You know, so much is going on in our world. I want people to get along. But here's the difference. In politics, we try to fix something. In spirituality, we let God heal something. Because whenever you are seeing hate in the news, underneath that hate is fear, and underneath that fear is a hurt. We can't make people be nice, but spirit can heal the wound that causes the acting out. It's much deeper. We've never been able to legislate people being nice to each other because the hurt will seep out. But God knows how to heal us at depth, not just us. It knows how to heal the world at depth so that love can be revealed. And I want to be a place where I can feel that and call that into existence. So let's say this 5 times. God's joy fills me now. Let's say that 5 times. God's joy fills me now. 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 And so from that place of allowing ourselves to accept the heavenly joy of God, to accept the heavenly experience that is not conditioned by conditions, to accept that, oh, I am so grateful. I am so grateful that we accept that and allow ourselves to make that welcome within our soul. That we pause, take a breath, and make welcome the experience of heaven on earth. We can't make it happen, but we can say yes to it. And all of heaven rejoices in our acceptance. And it will happen this moment or the next moment or the next or the next. We do not know when, because it comes secretly and then it flashes upon us. And in an instant, we see what's always been, that heaven is indeed upon this earth, that the fields are ripe with harvest. I give thanks that we are opening our spiritual eyes to see the magnificence of God wanting to work through its creation, and we are saying yes to that work. And so if you're willing to say yes to that work, just affirm in your heart that love is breaking out, that love is contagious, that acceptance is now the new norm, that embracing is now the new habit, that we are more willing to see what we have in common than how we are different, that it's not only happening within us and our family and our community and our city, but that it is spreading out in all directions. Allow yourself to breathe out and feel the contagion of the living Spirit moving from you in this instant, because it is. If you say it is, are you willing to step up and be the place, the epicenter of a whole new way of being on the planet? Are you willing to breathe in the fear and breathe out love? Are you willing to breathe in the wound and breathe out healing? Are you willing to breathe in the hate and breathe out unconditional acceptance? If so, you have joined the angels of the Most High. And there is a good for me, and I really ought to have it. And that good is my God. And my good is a world that works for everyone. And my good is the healing of differences. That good is a reveling in and acceptance of all people. That good is generosity. That good is a deep, abiding peace, where people are more into creation than consumption. There's a good for me, and I ought to have it. There's a good for this planet, and it's evolving now. And that good is our God, and so it is.